Good afternoon, everyone. Today we have two very, very special guests and some very disturbing news regarding Dr. Stephen Hatfill, who has been a senior advisor at HHS, has been fired abruptly due to some very suspicious circumstances. And he joins us today along with Gray Delany, who was the former director for MAHA implementation. And so both of these individuals have been fired for very strange reasons because they appear to be um, the few of the only honorable and in people with integrity that were operating within HHS. So they join us here today to explain what is happening. Is there a coup attempt ongoing? What's happening? Gray, take it away.
Yeah, so uh, where do I even start? So when I joined HHS, I would say the overarching problem we have right now is that there are very few good people, and I don't. There are some good people in there, but they're few and far between. And I hesitate to name them because they'll probably be put in a target list, so I'll leave them out for now. I think, I mean, I may have indirectly had a hand in Dr. Hatfill getting relieved because of us working together. But so when I joined HHS back in I guess it was June, it was with the I was brought on, and my main goal was to work with the base to advance Secretary Kennedy's agenda. And at that point, the MAHA base, was being pretty much ignored, and I really wanted to bring them in and help be kind of the liaison so that they could provide us cover. I mean, you've got Dr. Malone, you, Nick, all of these activists and doctors and epidemiologists that have millions and millions of followers and have been really working with the secretary for 10, 15, 20 years and have you know suffered tremendously with him to get to where we are today. And I felt that it was very unfortunate that they were being ignored. So that was one of my goals. We were that was not necessarily the strategy of the senior leadership. And I think what Dr. Hatfill and I are going to get into here is that there's a real problem at the top, and the people that surround Secretary Kennedy who have sequestered him. We don't even know I don't think he was aware of my firing. Like, I'm almost very confident he was not, and I'm very confident he was not aware of Dr. Hatfill's firing. And the most disturbing aspect of this is that the people that are doing the most work to advance his agenda, whether that be on the vaccine issue, Dr. Hatfill specifically on the mRNA issue. I was working more on the communication side of the mRNA issue. Dr. Hatfill was working more on the scientific side and the epidemiologist side. That we have, it seems like, paid a price for really helping the secretary. So now, who's going to pick up that baton at HHS? John Knox, who worked with Dr. Hatfill, is fortunately still in his position, and we need the base to rally behind him. Most people don't even know him, but he was working behind the scenes and was integral in all of the successes that Dr. Hatfill they had at ASPR, including cutting over $1 billion, $1 billion from BARDA, the Biological Research Division at HHS, that was responsible for funding pretty much for the entire creation of Moderna. So they had some very, very powerful enemies. They needed the support of the secretary and of the senior leadership. They did not have that support. In fact, they were chastised and criticized for speaking out of turn and attempting to defend these decisions. And so, the consequence is that now we have two less people, most importantly Hatfill and not me, who are not there to continue this fight. So there's more questions than answers right now, but we need answers.
Yeah, we do need answers. It sounds like there's some bad actors doing very bad things, endangering public health at the moment. That's very obvious. So, Dr. Hatfill, why don't you tell us what happened this past week? What was the reasoning for firing you? Was it warranted, or was it a bunch of nonsense?
Oh, it's a bunch of nonsense. They couldn't even decide what nonsense they wanted to use. On Friday, I had um, come back from leave, and it was in the late afternoon. And the chief of staff, the new chief of staff, Margaret had been fired earlier under really strange circumstances. I mean, she was just gone. It was a great chief of staff. But she was replaced by a young fellow named Matt Buckham, who was a White House liaison and responsible for, let's say, maybe not putting the best people into positions. And anyway, so I received a phone call from him, and he said that the secretary had asked for my resignation. Well, number one, that seemed a bit odd because Mr. Kennedy is a good man. He's a courageous man. I can't see, if I fired somebody, I would phone them and give them the reasons, and, fair enough. So it sounded a little fishy to me. And I asked, well, what are the reasons? He says, well, the secretary has decided to take ASPR, the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Readiness, in another direction. Well, pandemics are probably the most severe things we've faced, and some wildfires and some weather over the last sort of 5 years, with pandemics probably taking the lead as to strategic damage to the United States. You want to take it in another direction? And something was fishy there. And I said, well, I can't remember the exact words, but, that's a load of nonsense. You want me gone, you have to fire me. And I assumed, Mr. Kennedy or somebody would call. And I got back into D.C., prepared to go to work. Nothing worked. Computer didn't work anymore. Access card didn't work anymore. And basically, that's the last I heard of it. I got a phone call on my civilian phone. Well, when could I bring my computer and stuff in? And they'll come down and collect it from me, like the parking lot. And I thought, this isn't normal. And I mean, if Mr. Kennedy wants to be gone, by all means, I came to support him. And he had policies that were going to be difficult to explain. I came to provide the science behind that for him. And if I had to, get out in front and make the argument for him. So the first real critical thing were the messenger RNA vaccines withdrawing. We didn't need, these vaccines have killed thousands. Americans don't seem to understand. It has killed thousands and thousands of people. They're not vaccines. They never prevented infection. They never prevented disease transmission. That's all whitewash from the CDC based on computer models. And they've been caught out now. Tom Shimbuku was hiding data the whole time. You will probably go to jail. It was just an outrage, and they had to be stopped. The protein that you were being immunized against with the messenger RNA in the COVID vaccines was toxic, was wildly toxic. When you injected it into rats, if you got it into a tail vein, their hearts exploded. You didn't have to be a doctor on autopsy to see which rat had the vaccine. Strokes, amyloid. We now know that if you're vaccinated during pregnancy, it takes about an hour and the vaccine is in the fetus. We now have evidence of the vaccine passing into the fetus and integrating into the chromosomes of the fetus. There's been a newborn with spike protein floating around in their bloodstream. And we have a rat model for this as well. So these and it embeds little fragments of the spike protein or the gene into your own chromosomes. It's turned into DNA and it's fused.
So we have non-human chimeric
yes.
DNA at this point. And
yeah.
perhaps 80% of the American population. So this is very serious, right? That, yeah, people don't understand. This is serious. This is not, these are not games. And so,
Well, it's even
Yeah.
worse than this, because when you inject all these messenger RNA molecules, when the vesicle that's holding the fatty lipid that's holding the nanoparticle that's holding the messenger RNA, when it binds to a cell and it becomes part, and that messenger RNA floods into the cell, the virus thinks it's under, the cell thinks it's under viral attack. And it makes an antiviral response. And there are so many billions of pieces of messenger RNA in that cell, it eventually starts generating free radicals, becomes senescent, where it kills itself, a process called apoptosis, or it goes cancerous. We've had 2 large population studies now of vaccinated individuals. Looks like you have to have about 3 vaccines, or a vaccine and a booster. But there's a 200,000 study, 200,000 person study in Italy. And then there's an 8.4 million population study in South Korea, showing about a 46% increased chance of about 6 different cancers. These things never should have hit the market. There's been 6 very large multi-analysis studies showing that these vaccines had a negative benefit to risk ratio. In other words, you were better off to get COVID and be hospitalized with it than you were to take the vaccines. Not one person ever should have had this material. We now know that Pfizer lied about it. They covered stuff up. The CDC inexcusably and criminally covered up side effects. Nicholas, you've been working on this for years now. And, you've been a great source of strength for all of us out there fighting against this. So we finally get rid of it. But the best we can do is to stop the funding of it. They're still giving it to pregnant females. Well, they said, okay, well, any new vaccines will undergo a proper randomized clinical trial. Well, not one has been yet. What they did when Mr. Kennedy was up in Alaska is they snuck one through. And then another Spikevax, an update. So that's 2 now. None of these have been through randomized clinical trials. They want to give it to children. Children are fairly immune to COVID-19.
Dr. Hatfill, can I give the context for that back in July?
Yeah.
So this is, when I came on, we were getting killed by the MAHA base for the fact that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines were still under, for many risk groups and age categories, under emergency use authorizations, despite the fact that the emergency had been rescinded on March 15th, 2023. And so maybe this is about 2 weeks into my job, and Commissioner McCary comes into our office. He's very accessible, pleasant guy. And I said, Dr. McCary, I'm just getting killed on this. What is the explanation for this, you continuing to allow these vaccines to be under EUA? And he said, well, it would be a public relations disaster, and it would also, we would no longer be able to administer the vaccine to immunocompromised children. Well, I kind of bit my lip at that point, because I was only shortly into the job. But I said, this is the exact people that we don't want to be. I mean, we don't want to give anyone these vaccines, but this is the exact people that we really don't want to be giving these poisonous, toxic vaccines. So I immediately went to set up a meeting with Tony Lyons and Robert Malone to try to make the case to him about why to pull the EUA. And he was not able to accommodate the meeting that week. This was Tuesday. Wednesday, the scheduling request was postponed. Well, Thursday morning at 8 a.m., we get hit with this announcement. And meanwhile, the secretary is off in Europe. And no one had been informed of it in the public affairs department, nobody. So it was out of absolutely left field. We're already getting criticism that there's a huge op going on at HHS because Calamines has been brought in and he's just controlling Kennedy to only talk about food dyes, and we're not going to deal with the big picture issues. And then on top of that, we then have another COVID approval. I mean, it's bad enough that they're on the market, but then to approve new vaccines. So at that point, that was like, okay, something is seriously, seriously wrong here. And because of this, I mean, they only approved for high-risk children, whatever that means. There's not even a technical definition of that. But after that, we said, okay, now there's the perfect rationale to easily, from a political perspective, remove the EUA, because you can at least say the immunocompromised have access to it if they want to get it. Well, I think finally it was removed maybe a few weeks ago. But at that point, we then had a real issue with this Vinay Prasad, who was the head of the drug division at FDA, Laura Loomer, Sarepta, and then so Laura Loomer went at a Wall Street Journal. They started attacking him as a Bernie Sanders supporter. I don't think Vinay is perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but he was at least bringing a new level of scrutiny to these drugs. And at the same time, we had pulled this muscular dystrophy drug from Sarepta off the market because it had killed 3 children. Well, guess who they hired? Chris LaCivita, former Trump campaign manager, Rick Santorum, Reince Priebus. So if you talk, I'm more of a political guy, so I'm trained in political warfare. And if you're trying to map out, okay, what is our opposition, which you're going to have opposition. These pharmaceutical companies are massive. Like Dr. Hatfill said to me earlier today, or maybe an early interview, they literally are like small countries at this point, that their GDP is so large and they're so powerful. So if you have to create a war room basically to counteract that, you at least have to be aware of their lines of effort, who they have inside. I mean, they place people inside the agency. I can name them. They have people on the outside. They've got members of Congress. So who is their network? And then you figure out, okay, how are we, who are their people within maybe the administration, even in the White House? And it's always going to be that way. But unless you actually map it out and you develop a plan to counter it, because you can, and you have to use some of the tactics they use, you're going to get left as roadkill if you don't counter it. And that's unfortunately what's happened. Hatfield's gone, I'm gone, and we're not making progress in some of these major issues. So that kind of sets the stage for that. That's into July, and then we go into early August. We have this mRNA announcement. Once again, no strategic communications whatsoever. The strategy of the people at the top at HHS, and Buckham, Stephanie, is let's keep this announcement internal. Let's put out a direct-to-camera video where the secretary announces it on X, and then a short press release, and let's call it a day. When you're talking about dealing with trillion-dollar companies of issues, I mean, vaccines have become a religion to most people. You have to have surrogates lined up. The secretary needs to be out to go on CNBC, Dr. Hatfill, others. There needs to be a whole plan in place. And that's why we kind of took it upon ourselves, to try to get Dr. Hatfill on Bannon. I mean, it should have been that times a million. But he did a terrific job, and I believe one of the most devastating takedowns of the mRNA technology in that 7 minutes, so back on August, whatever, of the mRNA technology. But we lost that was the last interview. I think he had one more. But there was no other interviews given by anybody else. There was no fact. We were working on a fact sheet, that you would distribute to stakeholders, members of Congress, explain the study. There was none of that.
Here's the thing. Mr. Kennedy looked at me and said, I want you on TV. I want you out there defending this decision. Try to get the American people to understand. I said, yes, sir. So the Bannon was the quickest thing we could get on. We went on that. I'm sitting in the chair ready for the videos to start, and Stephanie Spear phones and cancels it. And, I just said, oh, hell no. Because you just canceled $700 million Moderna. And, of course, the companies are going to phone their bought lawyers. They're going to phone their bought congressman, their bought senator. Bernie Sanders, 1.2 million in campaign donations. Okay. And Mr. Kennedy has no defense. He's not equipped. He's not a doctor. He's not a scientist. He's not equipped to argue back the need for these. So I said, we're going on anyway. And then Stephanie Bannon phoned her, Stephanie Spear, the communications director, and she go, so now suddenly, oh yes, you can go on. So we did that, and the next day, Emerald at is she OAN or America's Lindell TV. So she phoned, and I thought, yeah, sure, I'm supposed to be on it. And so I went on there, and I got a phone call from this new chief of staff, a 30-year-old something, just reading me the riot act. You're not to go on television unless, Stephanie Spear approves of it. I thought, well, that's not the instructions I got from the secretary. But you're in a chain of command, so you'll follow that. And I kept sending over requests to Rich Danker, and he would pass it up. And Rich would approve it, and Stephanie would not approve it. She shut him off. So nobody's out there. The Tylenol thing. Yes, the evidence, majority of evidence shows Tylenol is harmful or can be harmful in pregnancy. These midwives have been handing it out like candy for the last 10 years, along with giving nitrous oxide during delivery. They're out of control. The child's liver isn't mature enough to handle the Tylenol. Okay? And it's setting up oxidative reactions in their brain, and it's damaging. But that's just one thing. The childhood vaccination schedule is probably the major thing. There's other things. There's genetic causes. There's mitochondrial causes. But all of these things are synergistic. That's why there's an autism spectrum between mild and profound. Depending on how many of these little things, the summation of all that is greater than any one of these things alone. And yes, Tylenol was involved. Very good study that had gone through 2 statistical challenges and survived with the data still intact. So we'll get out there and
so yeah, we just came out with this study. You're right. Vaccines are the most significant risk factor, without a doubt. That's completely accurate. So I just want to say, everybody go check out this study, 80 pages of undeniable evidence. It's the vaccines. We can't just be focusing on one singular drug. We have to also look at the 30 other drugs associated with neurodevelopmental disorders. Again, all these other things work synergistically, but vaccines, 32 doses by age 2. It's quite undeniable. Most have never been tested anyways. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there, but yeah, go on.
It's good slide and accurate. So I can't get out to defend him. The Tylenol thing was very easy to defend. Before I give Mr. Kennedy anything, I write quite a large document full of references. Every sentence or every paragraph in these documents are accompanied by a reference. And I wanted to go through it with him so he could understand that this was just one thing. The vaccines were probably, no, can't go on any program, no. And I've not been on since. Now, this is insanity, or it's intentional.
It's both.
And then it's not just me. There's a number of people. Mr. Kennedy picked us as a group. He selected us to come and help him. We were given a task. Mine was pandemic preparedness. And every step of the way, we seemed to be being blocked by Matt Buckham. This wasn't the same under Heather when she was chief of staff. She was very, very helpful and a very, very pleasant to work with. This Matt Buckham guy, somebody's running him. I think he's just the gopher. But somebody's telling him to do this. Oh, no, block that. Oh, no, we can't have that. And there's another issue. I'm not there anymore, so I can't really discuss it. But there was another issue we were going to bring up. And that's when He said that well, he lied to me, that ASPR is going to go in another direction. Away from pandemic preparedness, away from damaging vaccines. So on my first day that I walked in to ASPR at HHS, Buckham called me over. He was still the White House liaison at that time. And he told me that he wanted to get rid of John Knox, who had taken over as principal deputy secretary. One of the finest leaders, probably next Peter Navarro, that I've ever had the privilege of working with, was on the ground at 9/11 with no respirator, breathing in all that toxic stuff, looking for victims. I mean, truly, he's a national hero. And his experience in disasters is, I don't know of anyone any better. When he was a medic, he worked on Skid Row in San Francisco by choice, because that's where the problems were. That's the type of man he is. And Matt Buckham told me, well, we want to get rid of John Knox. And, I don't know how he got in there, but we didn't want him in there. And I don't know whose we is. Mr. Kennedy asked him directly, please join. And here's this little twerp doing his own thing. And so I went back. I told John Knox about it. And, this is the underhanding nonsense you had to deal with there.
There's gatekeepers.
Yeah.
But
I don't know who's pulling his strings. He's not smart enough to be doing stuff like this on his own, or brave enough. But somebody's running him. And it's causing the entire HHS to be in free fall. We haven't even got into pandemic preparedness yet. These two people, Stephanie Spear and Matt Buckham, literally, and I'm not the only one. Gray isn't the only one. There's a number of people that Mr. Kennedy brought in, gave them tasks, and they're not being allowed to do it by Matt Buckham. So somebody's running HHS, but it doesn't appear like Mr. Kennedy is even aware of it.
And that's not to speak of the government.
Let me tell you something. That man is brave. He's a good man. He's for America. He's a tough guy. But he's not a scientist. He's not a doctor. And they've left him out there all by himself to get battered by the press. I could have taken down Bernie Sanders during that hearing with 2 seconds. You let 2 babies die. No, it was malpractice. It was medical malpractice. They were to have had their treatment for bacterial pneumonia and they didn't get it. It wasn't due to measles. Measles had caused it, but their death was a bacterial pneumonia. I'm sorry. I witnessed this stuff day in and day out. It's all rubbish. And instead of banding together and let's fixing things, everybody wants a seat at the table. There's too many people deciding on what drugs are strategic. Half of them aren't even doctors. You wonder why nothing works? Well, there's no wonder.
It's no wonder
anything works.
It's no wonder. So that's why they're just approving all this garbage. They're just guessing. They're just without doing any, molecular surveillance.
Cavazzoni didn't even test the vaccines on children. She just edicted that, we'll take it down to 6-month-old babies. And the problems that are occurring because of this, the miscarriage rate, and the military seem to have the best data on this, we're talking 76% of pregnancies miscarrying. Birth defects, they've hidden. Most of these things, and when they talk about how safe it is, well, if you survive to get a live birth, yeah, that's a good figure. But it doesn't account for the 40 others that died during the first trimester, during the first few weeks after pregnancy. And it's all carefully constructed that way. It is an outrage. People need to go to jail. Seriously. There's crimes that have been committed here. And until this is sorted out, you can't trust anything coming out of the FDA.
Crimes have been committed, and they're still being committed. That is for
Yes, they
sure.
are. So you could probably see that I represent a threat to somebody.
I mean, Secretary Kennedy is, as Dr. Hatfill said, is a man of courage, intellect.
Yes.
I mean, he's a true believer. I spent time with him. He knows everything backwards. I mean, I remember I was in Idaho and we had a conversation with this farm about glyphosate, and the farmer tried to say, "Oh, well, we only spray when the corn is 8 inches, and then after it at harvesting time, there's no traces of glyphosate." Kennedy, in a very polite way, completely, he referenced study after study after study. So he's a true believer right now, but he's just being managed. He is being totally managed. And then when you get into government, and a lot of people don't understand why there hasn't been one person arrested yet in this administration for the Russia hoax, for the vaccine, for anything. So, and we're all told that, trust the plan, trust the plan. No, we don't have time to trust the plan. We have midterms coming up next year. Our country is in a very, very precarious position. And we have to have people that have courage and are not told, well, now that you're here, there's different interests at the White House. We have to balance the pharmaceutical industry. They give a lot of money. It's great. It's not that easy. Well, okay, so we're just going to sit back and say, all right, then we're just going to play this long game for the next 30 years. It's not going to know it. That's not going to work. And so there's a paralysis inside HHS and inside the government, but definitely inside HHS, that everyone is so scared to do anything because they feel like they'll get their hands chopped off. And that's happened.
Well, they will get their hands chopped off. And
so you have no one willing to take any initiative on anything and if you go send some memo up to the top to Stephanie or whatever, it doesn't go anywhere. 95% of the time. Now it has. I'll give her credit. I mean, I was able to get the Idaho farm tour stop added, but for the most part, people have just given up, especially in the communications, sector.
Who was that farmer that was so furious at her on Emerald?
Oh, Steve Jarvis.
Boy, he was furious.
But
how do we change this? What do we do? What can we do next? Do we expose anybody in particular? Do we, can Kennedy change this? Can he remove the rats? Like, what can happen? What's the most logical and actionable step?
I expose the people that were involved. It's free. You can get it off Amazon. I gave a detail throughout 2020 how 2 effective drugs, safer than aspirin by the FDA's own rating, could have prevented COVID-19. And a simple nasal spray called azolastine.
So a simple nasal spray is better than the synthetic gene transfer products.
Yeah, there was no need for it. There was no need to vaccinate. I mean, when you really look at the abridged figures from other countries and see that virtually very few children died in Wales or Scotland or England. The United States, our death rate is twice that of India, a country with a 6 times greater population. India had better medical care for COVID-19 than the United States.
So we were worse than we were literally the worst. Literally the worst.
Yeah.
We are the sickest country with had the high, and Kennedy said this in the campaign trail, with the highest per capita death rate of any country in the world.
He's right.
And we have to take on the big issues quickly, because removing, and I like Callie, and I got along very well with Callie, but and this is no shot at Callie, but removing food dyes from M&Ms is not going to make our country healthier. So we're talking about FDA. What could FDA do? Easily could do something about the enriched and processed grains, that's causing all these intolerances. All these things. Nothing was getting addressed. Nothing's getting addressed.
You remove the food dyes from the M&Ms, but your pharmaceuticals that come through these pharmacy benefit managers from China are covered in like carcinogenic orange dye. I'm serious. They're constantly finding carcinogens in these drugs that are coming over. It's all a gimmick.
Yeah, don't buy your kids M&Ms, right? It's that simple. Don't eat M&Ms. It's that simple, right? And so when and so I saw the other day there was a tweet from one of the state governments, one of the governors, who was peddling free mRNA vaccines for 6-month-olds, in a public statement on X. This was last week. So they're still doing this. Is that legal based on the evidence we have?
No, it's malpractice.
No, I mean, the ACIP committee has moved, and Dr. Levy and others on the ACIP committee are incredible, brilliant immunologists, and they have been successful. They have not removed them from the market, but they have been successful in moving them from the top recommendation, meaning pediatricians, et cetera, are required to provide these vaccines, to, I guess, what's called level 3 informed consent. So that if you move it, it's still an important change, because that means that the patient has to be basically sign off on receiving the vaccine if there's an injury, because the COVID shots were done under the PrEP Act and not under the 86, that they are then responsible for any new injuries going forward if they receive it. So therefore, after those changes were made, if you went to a CVS, say if I'm a healthy individual, I'm 35 years old, I cannot get a COVID vaccine. So I'm not saying there are not. There have been positive steps, but you watch the ACIP committee. Why did they not address the hepatitis B in the last meeting? They get bullied by the CDC and these bureaucrats, and then they push it off to the next meeting because that's easier, and then push it off to the next. Well, we don't have time for that. So my suggestion moving forward, that Kennedy needs a political warfare unit. He needs to play harder ball with people like Senator Cassidy. He needs to remove and replace the people surrounding him at the top. And if there's issues in the White House or there's other people holding him back, then he needs to deal with that more aggressively. And there's a way for that political warfare group and that war room within him to counter that more effectively. I don't think it's being done right now. Right now, it is a trust the president and RFK. They have a special bond, and we're going to get where we all want to go eventually. Well, look what happened. Did you see Secretary Kennedy standing behind Burla, the Pfizer CEO, at the White House? As Trump said, they did a great job during COVID, and we're giving them $70 billion. I mean, it was humiliating. I mean, Secretary Kennedy should not have gone. My recommendation would have been a silent act of protest. Do not show up there, because that was humiliating. And eventually, you have to say, this is not part of big trust the plan, that I'm not going to stand and sit there behind a company that's killed millions and millions of Americans and people around the world. So
you need to understand another thing. This virus has changed. It was really nasty when it came out. It had certain sequences in there that had been placed in there. But over time, there's a thing called Mueller's ratchet, that generally these viruses get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker because they build up mutations. They're RNA viruses. They make mistakes when they replicate all the time. And eventually there's so much rubbish in there, they come to a sort of a symbiosis with their host. Maybe you're sick for a day or two or something, and enough virus replicates. But it's not the original thing. And this is what's happened with COVID-19. The back mutations can occur, but generally speaking, they lose their virulence with time. There's really no reason to be vaccinated. Keep in mind, we have two very good drugs that I watched intentionally maligned: hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. And these were intentionally maligned. There were no cardiac events from hydroxychloroquine. They were looking at late patients, and the disease itself was causing a cytokine storm and interfering with the ion gates in the heart. It wasn't due to hydroxychloroquine per se. If it was taken early, and many studies show taken early, there's no change in your baseline ECG with COVID. You're over it within 5 days, you're back to work. If it was that dangerous, why could all the patients with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and scleroderma in the United States, about 1.2 million, they weren't advised not to take hydroxychloroquine because they take it as a treatment for their condition. They weren't advised to stop treatment if they caught COVID-19.
They were not.
This stank from day one. It was intentional to make room for these vaccines.
So since it's intentional, that brings up, so many implications, right? Because, that opens the door to many serious things,
A number of things. This was coordinated.
This was, and so now we're paying the consequences. The health of the globe, or at least in countries that rolled out this garbage, are paying the consequences. Generations are paying the consequences, and so what's happening? So is this the firing of both of you? Is this some sort of effort to literally get Kennedy out of there completely and just replace him with some pharma bot? What's going on? What do you think is the end goal here?
Well, you're not going to have pandemic preparedness. I mean, there's some good people involved in this, but they didn't have anyone sort of at the top really hard pushing for this or knowing what to do. It's going to affect that. I doubt if things are going to change. The WHO pandemic guidelines are still atrocious. That's probably what they'll try to follow. I assume they'll be after others. And
well, the problem, Dr. Hatfill, is we had to move heaven and earth. At least I did to even get in. And a lot of the Kennedy people, Secretary Kennedy had this view that he was going to be able to get hundreds of his. I mean, Dr. Lyons Waller, who did an excellent interview recently on War Room that I encourage everyone to listen to, and is one of the foremost experts on autism, and especially the neurotoxicity from aluminum and the effect that has on autism, which unfortunately was left out of the report. But he was interviewing. So personnel is policy. So how was Trump undermined the first term? You had Chris Christie, and then you had Bill Haggerty and John Gallagher, who were completely subverting the transition, and they fill it with a bunch of deep state. And then all of a sudden you have everyone turning against Trump and actively involved in the coup against Trump from the inside. That happened in the first term. So you think hopefully we learn that and we're better off the second term. Now, most people would say, oh, we're much better off. Everything is night and day. Thank the Lord we lost the 2020 election because Trump has learned so much. That's kind of the narrative that's out there, right? So personnel is policy. Matt Buckham and the liaisons off to HHS working with the White House. All these, Dr. Lyons Waller was interviewing hundreds of people right after the election. I was one of them. And all these smart doctors, I was feeding them people that I knew. And guess how many have been hired? Maybe 1, 2, or 0 from that list. Because I was telling Dr. Lyons Waller, I said, are you at the Mar-a-Lago? Because that's where they're interviewing people. Susie Wiles and everyone else. That's the team interviewing people. So you have to be there. You think you're just going to be able to interview and hand your list over to personnel at the White House, and then they're just going to say, "Oh yeah, it sounds good. Here's your top 150 people." Well, that's what Kennedy needed to implement the changes he wanted to make. He doesn't. He has very few of his people at HHS or any of the agencies. So that's why you're not seeing the progress. You have to
Yeah.
have dozens of people or hundreds.
It's diluted out. They let Harvey Risch sit on his tail for months before they bring in a pharma oncologist in to take over National Cancer Institute. Harvey is very good at clinical trial data, and he would have saved this country billions of dollars getting rid of some of the, these cancer drugs. Well, it'll extend your length of survival like by 3 months. And the poor husband, his wife, he sells everything to pay for these drugs. She dies and he's broke. And this has been going on all the time. Harvey would have put a stop to that. He didn't get in.
So many people could have gotten in, and we actually, America would have been made healthy again by a measurable degree at this point if all of these people were actually put into place. Is that right?
Where's Dr. Ryan Cole? Where's Dr. Pierre Corey? Where's Dr. Peter McCullough? Where are you, Nick? Where is everybody? They're not there. So you have a few people like Dr. Hatfill, and they can't change everything. Now, Dr. Hatfill was making substantive changes, and in my opinion, that's the problem. That's why he's gone. And they cite that, he misrepresented his title. Hogwash. That he wasn't given a real reason why. The reason he was removed is because he was making too much progress on Kennedy's agenda, period.
And that was the best news, I've heard in the last year was the canceling of the mRNA contracts. That was the best thing, right? So when you do things great that people actually like, you get outcasted. That's evil.
I didn't really in my own group at Asper. We were making really good progress towards the president wanted our local authorities strengthened for resilience. And in a pandemic, that means the ability to do a medical surge. And we had found some ways to do this. We had found some money, I think, to do this. And we were about to ready to get a program started and underway. And yeah.
And I can also tell you without any hesitation that Stephanie Spear did not want anyone that was well credentialed and had their own networks to get in. She would prefer to hire a bunch of people in their mid-20s because they could be controlled. And she guards access to Kennedy like Peter the Great. He was guarded by the Imperial Guard. You cannot get to him, you cannot text him, you're not supposed to call him. And I think that he's just isolated, he's sequestered, and the Buckham's probably part of that too. And so you have a secretary that doesn't even aware that Hatfill's being fired, probably not even aware that I'm being fired, not aware that we don't have a strategy for communications rollout of the mRNA cuts. So that's a huge problem. Is she didn't want these really smart people to get in, and I know a bunch of people that I recommended that no, they're not in. None of them are. And they kept calling me. And I said, I'm trying, but I couldn't make any headway on them.
So we do need, go on.
The chief of staff has to go. He's greatly, it's like a second lieutenant mentality. Well, you're the boss and you'll do this and that. The guy needs to go. He's useless. He was not good at selecting the proper personnel for the executive branch of government. He was lousy at it. And he's lousy as a chief of staff. He is not pushing Mr. Kennedy's policies forward. He is inhibiting them. People can't get things done because of Matt Buckham. So I couldn't get things done because of Stephanie Spear.
So is Kennedy aware of this, you think? Wouldn't he be pissed that, his guard dog is, blocking everything from happening? Wouldn't he be pissed about that?
Well, you would think. I would be.
There's something holding him back. I mean, he was supposed to call me. He texted me and said he was going to call me.
Yeah.
After I was let go. He did not call. So he's constrained in some way, and we need to free him from that constraint, because if he was unfettered and able to run the agency to the full extent of his capabilities, who knows the extent of the progress we could make. I mean, we could cure the chronic disease epidemic in 4 years. So, but at this rate, we're going to be worse off than where we started. And we're going to do the damage you do long term to the base. I mean, you demoralize the base, and people get more and more skeptical of any future revolution. This is so I can't underscore how detrimental this is going to be to the long-term success of the Make America Healthy Again movement if we don't make any progress here. I mean, we're not going to get someone better than Secretary Kennedy. I mean,
we're demoralized. Yeah, we're demoralized. So the MAHA base is split, demoralized, and the other side is also hates what they're doing. So now kind of everybody hates what's happening. How is that a good idea? How was that ever a good plan?
And the way that you deal with the people that are against you, working from the inside, wherever that may be, is we take that mRNA announcement, you make a big announcement, you put your foot in the gas pedal, you rally the base, and we rallied the base. I mean, I just think of Naomi Wolf and Mary Tyler Bode and others that have been very critical and thought this was all enough. They all got in line, everyone was on board. Imagine if we had hit the ground running. Hatfill's doing show after show, secretaries out there, we have other doctors lined up, and then you establish momentum, and then you become a runaway freight train that can't be stopped. And then you just go. And then your opponents are basically neutralized, and you're operating from a position of strength. Right now, we're operating in a complete position of weakness.
Can this happen still? Is there a possibility this can still happen?
Yes, of course there is. With God's will, there is, absolutely. So I would ask everyone that's watching this to please tweet at the secretary and ask for Dr. Hatfill to be reinstated. That's a good start, and then we can deal with these larger questions. But people have to develop some courage. Everyone's scared, very scared of the top leadership, Buckham and Stephanie. That cannot continue. We have to have an honest conversation here about the issues, because there's too much at stake. We're not going to take this line down.
Yeah, Secretary Kennedy, he's got to reinstate Dr. Hatfill. That's a definitely necessary step that needs to happen. So as we kind of continue our discussion, everybody who's watching now, you can send in your questions in the comment section or chat section, and we will try and answer some of them. So again, you can ask us some questions and we will try and answer some. But okay, so we talked about a lot of this stuff already. So Dr. Hatfill, what do you have anything else you want to say about this recent firing attempt that they made, and was there anything else strange that you might want to tell us?
Well, the whole thing was strange. It was driven by a small number of people. I don't know who's pulling Matt Buckham's strings, but he's not bright enough or brave enough to do something like this himself. So somebody's telling him what to do. And he just doesn't. I've always tried to stay in my lane. My job's pandemic preparedness. The vaccines did not fit into that role. You cannot vaccinate your way out of a rapidly mutating RNA virus. You'll always be behind. Your vaccine by the time it gets out to the people, that virus strain will be extinct and it's mutated on. You'll always be chasing it. And by giving poorly matched vaccines, you cause a lot of other medical problems for an individual. You make things worse.
Definitely.
So the vaccines had to go.
Oh, yeah. And they have to, just like every other drug or biologic that injures or kills at least 3 people. But this is, hundreds of thousands of casualties. So we have a question. So have you guys heard anything from Kennedy? I know you answered that, but
Nothing.
nothing. So I haven't heard anything from Kennedy. So that's obviously worrisome. Let's see this next one. Please let me know the exact names of people preventing us from going forward. I work with Spirit and can possibly do something.
Spirit, I don't know. As we said, the top leadership, Buckham and Spear.
Yeah. I mean, there's some good people there, but it's not Buckham.
The hands are tied behind their back. The people that are good, they're some very good people that know what to do.
Anything they can do,
but they can't do anything, and they're totally constrained. So I have faith that Trump does care about the vaccine issue. He does care about he's placed a lot of faith in Kennedy. Unfortunately, Trump is easy. He wants to be liked, and so and often he listens to the last person he spoke with. So I think the more pressure we can apply from the MAHA base, the better. And the White House, people like, for example, Susie Wiles, she's a very cold political person. I'm not saying that negatively necessarily. She's just calculating, okay, if we were to go with the pharma and they were to donate X amount of money versus, oh, look at all, we have millions of people, MAHA voters, that would be really upset that if we made this decision. So we have to stay united as a base. And sometimes putting pressure is a good thing because it can help us get to where we want to go. And I know that in the White House, from the political side, they're balancing that each and every day. So the stronger that we are as a voting bloc, the more that we're going to get. And I don't think that we've done a good job of utilizing our base because there has not been a good coordination between the inside and the base.
Definitely. Next question. Kennedy must be compromised and have no real authority if he is allowing this to happen. Is that a possibility? Why is he compromised? What has compromised him, you think?
The schedule is so intense. Even my schedule, I go in the morning and it's all set out. And, I was nowhere near as busy as he is. It's very possible that they're keeping him away from everything. You really don't have a lot of time to yourself. And when you get home after work, there's still catch up to do. It's incredibly long hours. And I can't remember when I watched the news last. Well, I'm watching it now. But I didn't see what was on the news for 6 months. I had no idea what was going on.
All right. We have another question. Wiles is the one who said cleaning the voter rolls is like sweeping a dirt floor. I don't know exactly what that appears to mean. Does anybody want to comment on that?
I think that means he just only scratches the surface. It's window dressing, which I would agree with. You got to deal with the machines, and this is not the conversation for that, but I think that's what that person's getting at.
Yeah. Well, so this is a disappointing and dark development that nobody wanted to hear. And it actually appears that as each week goes by, we hear something increasingly worse. So what was it? Previous, it was the Pfizer deal. Before that was the M-next spike approval, which stands for M death spike in Latin. You can keep going on and on. So why did it go from kind of good, we're making good progress, and then it just kind of collapsed?
People got bolder on the other side.
My closing thoughts would be Secretary Kennedy is a very good man. I pray for him. I pray that if there's anything that's constraining him, that he breaks free of it. And anything we're there willing to help. We're not trying to tear down the agency or tear him down. It's the last thing we're trying to do. We all have the same goal. And We care about the health of our children and the health of our nation. And we are a very, very sick nation. And we didn't even, I mean, if you talk about the farming problem and what Trump said about the Argentinian beef, I mean, we have a real problem with healthy food, with over vaccinating, with processed grain. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So we need bold, courageous people in these agencies, these health agencies, if we're going to start turning this around. And Dr. Hatfill and John Knox were one of the only ones doing it. And the secretary wants to, and he has made progress on a number of issues, but he's a good man. President Trump is a good man. We just, I believe we can see a turnaround here, but it's going to take some courage.
Yes. The public's awake. You know, the public is on our side, right? And so nobody really supports the nonsense they're doing now. So when do you think they will change their mind, or when can things possibly change? So if we keep speaking up and keep bringing this up, how long will that take? Or will they ever reverse this? Because that needs to happen. Both of you guys need to be reinstated, and then we can finally see these changes. What's the likelihood of that, and how soon could that happen?
Could start tomorrow with the formation of a special task force combined of special prosecutor and a scientific team. We know where a lot of the bones are buried. We know the names. We know who did what. And it's time to start writing up charges and time for people to go to jail. Because this will just continue until there's really overt evidence that, oh yeah, you will go to jail. It's like whack-a-mole. And, but nothing seems to be happening.
One of my first recommendations was for a COVID task force. I think for the healing of this nation, I mean, the damage, I think someone in the comments talked about, it's cost this country 40 times more than 9/11. I think that's true. And it's the tip of the iceberg right now as far as the economic costs, because the average age, I think Dr. Hatfill, you told me previously that the vaccine is expected to reduce one's life expectancy by an average of 20 years. So imagine what's the public health cost of these COVID vaccines going to be? The lies that have been told by our public health authority. We have to get to the bottom. We have to hold people accountable, and that starts. I mean, that could start tomorrow. A special prosecutor and a true committee to research and get to the bottom. I want to see all the emails. I want everything subpoenaed about Woodcock and all these corrupt officials at FDA.
I drafted an executive order, or the best I could. I've never done one before, but I got some help, and I've had it for 3 months now. Nobody seems interested.
Can you speak on the contents of it in general?
Well, it outlines the formation of a special scientific team made up of different experts, clinical trial specialists, statisticians, to go over all the data, the clinical trials of Pfizer and Moderna. Things were hidden. We know things were hidden. There's some tapes out there. And criminal prosecution.
That needs to happen. That should have happened on day one. Task force.
We thought it would.
That.
But if you had the proper committee at HHS investigating this is the way to handle with Trump, because Trump, it happened under his watch, but he was lied to, and you would come out with a report about how and this is all in Dr. Hatfill's book.
They lied to him for years.
How did Deborah Brooks get that position? How did Mike Pence end up in that position? And you take this to Trump and you show how Pfizer lied, and then. If that was all done within the first couple of months at HHS, you never would have had Albert Bourla over there at the White House a few weeks ago getting $70 billion. So the fact that we haven't done that is leading to these just heinous. I mean, to sit there and have to watch it makes you want to cry. So it can still be turned around, but it needs to start now, and it's going to take some courage.
Who do we contact to complain about this? That's the next question. Is there any contact that people can voice their serious concerns to?
Directly to the secretary, tag him, and to President Trump.
Yeah, how do you get something? I can't get anything to them. They're sequestered.
They're blockaded. They're
In
blockaded.
2020, I was 150 feet from him. It was across the street at the EOB, the narrow street. I couldn't get to him.
So I guess we have to change or make the public in mass aware of this. And
It's the only thing that can be done.
yeah, that's the only thing that can be done. And I think it's happening. I think it's happening. I mean, it's just hard to get past the demoralization aspects. And so many people are tired of talking about things like mRNA because nothing happens. But, you know, what do we have to do? We have to keep speaking up, right? What else is there to do?
No, I mean, and we have to support those that are, for example, Dr. Levy and other Dr. Plebsworth, Dr. Malone, that are trying to make some of these substantive changes, and they have made some progress at ACIP, but it's not up to them. I mean, these decisions should be made at the FDA level. You know, it's always throwing the football and the hot potato to somebody else to make the decision. And it should not fall on ACIP to make these decisions. It needs to fall on, this is going to take leadership from FDA. And I think when Dr. Hatfill can explain, but when Geitler was not put in at FDA, that was a real setback. And so McCary is a good man, but it took a bulldog, because that is obviously all the drugs and vaccines, everything, and that needed the whole review process to be reformed. And it wasn't just about new products going forward. Everything currently that had been approved needed to be reevaluated.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Dr. McCary is a good man. I think he's a kind man. But you need a carnivore in there. It's a mess.
It's a mess. It's a mess. And, you know, I think we touched on everything in this interview. And it seems the conclusion is there's a rat or many rats in HHS or executive branch that is fragmenting everything and causing it to be impossible to actually make America healthy again. And now we need a special task force. That appears to be the main message here. So what else do you guys want to say before we close this out?
On the 3rd to the 5th, there's supposed to be a protest in downtown DC with these groups that have just suddenly appeared. They're funded by outside people. It's time to start looking at this, because their job, when they do this, they want the vaccines back. This is organized. It's funded. Somebody's funding them. It's time to get to the bottom of this. And now we're talking special task force.
Something that we're going to work on is a set of recommendations that'll be short to the point. Someone mentioned in the comments here about Dr. Weiler, his list of recommendations for personnel. We need to put that out into the public, and then we can rally the MAHA base saying we need to get these people in these positions, and these people need to be hired. Because the only way that we're going to get fast track to fixing all these issues is to have the right personnel in there. It's not going to happen.
Have the right people.
It's got to happen. It's got to happen, and hopefully it will. Hopefully it will. We'll keep raising these concerns, and I think, you know, this interview will do pretty well. People will see it, and we'll continue fighting this very difficult fight against Goliath. or something even worse. And so thank you guys so much for coming on. Again, one last chance. Anything else you guys want to say before we close out today?
That's it. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you for what you're doing, and we'll stick together. And God's in charge. So trust the Lord, and
You've done a fantastic job, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You really have.